Just about to get the starting flag here for the Buckeye 300 presented by Nationwide. Let's take a look at the starting grid for this one. We've already met Jeff Neal and talked to Gary St. Amant, who sit in the pole position and outside of the front row respectively in their automobiles. They'll have the lead positions.
And the veterans, Mike Eddy and Bob Seneca, who won their respective 50-lap qualifying races. Mike actually had the 9th best time yesterday, but did it with a broken shock, and Bob Seneca didn't really care where he started his qualifying race.
The third row, Brad Loney, young enough to be a rookie driver, and Dave Sensiba, winner of the Pat Schauer Memorial Rookie Driver of the Year award last time around. And as we said, now Sensiba's going to have to get his TV time the old-fashioned way and earn it. Looks like he's on his way to doing just that, sitting outside the third row.
Right, and these are the two drivers who finished third in their respective qualifying races. Glenn Allen Jr., my pick for the championship, and Joe Knott, who ran very well in this race. It was non-televised a year ago, but he could be a dark horse candidate for a victory this afternoon.
And on the fifth row, on the inside, it's Scott Hansen in the number 53, Wisconsin Aviation Ford, and on the outside, Eddie Sharp, the first of the rookie drivers who qualified for this field. A total of 5 of them made it into the race, and Eddie Sharp, high hopes for him under the tutelage of Johnny Benson Jr.
Yet another rookie contender, Jay Summers, driving for Canadian veteran legend Junior Hanley, and Matt Kenseth, who may or may not be added to the rookie program if sponsorship is finalized.
On the 7th row, Tony Raines, of course, he's got what he hopes to be reliable equipment underneath him. No one has ever doubted his talent. And for Jay Sauter in the number 1 car on the outside there, well, he's moved into a different car, a different color. He still has that same number 1 on the outside. It remains to be seen what Jay's going to be able to do for this season.
The 8th row, veteran Kent Stauffer. We always expect to see him somewhere in the top 10 before the afternoon is over. And Harold Fair, I wrote a column and I said Harold's an outside shot for a championship. He sold his business so his odds would improve, and he pointed it out to me.
On the 9th row, Tony Roper starts in the number 10 automobile, the Childs Tire Snyder Equipment Chevrolet, and next to Bill Baird, who has shown steady and almost spectacular improvement based on what we saw from him this morning, earlier, we should say today, in the qualifying race. That's the 9th row for this Buckeye 300.
Row number 10, A.J. Cooper, the quiet young man, the Morton Enterprises Ford Thunderbird from Missouri, and the racing MD, Dr. Yale Conley, and he's from West Virginia in his Simonton Window Chevy.
As we move back through the field, we have a couple of new names, new faces here to the American Speed Association. Wearing number 31, Rick Miller. He'll be starting his car inside of row 11. On the outside, the local fans certainly have their man in this race, as Ken Sward will start and give the folks here in Columbus, Ohio, something to cheer for.
In the 12th row, Steve Holtzhausen, driving again that car that Scott Hansen drove last year, and Ted Smokestad, one again of only 5 rookies to make the field.
And on row 13, a lot further back than he would want to have started, Mike Miller, who was leading briefly in the qualifying race, passed by Bob Seneca, had a cut tire on the right front side. He went straight backwards. Pat Bordeaux led, started from the pole in the second qualifying race. He finds himself alongside Mike Miller way back in the field. 1 lap to green. Brian Refner, the rookie runner-up, and Tom Jones occupy row 14. And last but certainly not least, we have Todd Forbes in the 07 on the inside of row 15. He had some trouble in the qualifier. And Dennis Lampman, the gentle giant, rounds out the field for this Buckeye 300 presented by Nationwide. Brett Bell, Rick Beebe, Bobby Archer, and a host of others didn't make the field. We'll update you on that list shortly. The green flag is waving, and from the pole, Jeff Neal already gets a challenge on the outside from Gary St. Amant, who was the fastest qualifier, but he holds him off going into turn number 3. Jeff Neal in the split fire number 75 there, and Gary St. Amant showing us early anyway that two-groove racing is alive and well here at Columbus Motor Speedway. Behind the front-running pair, most of the drivers have elected to fall into line. Several still running the high side include Dave Sensiba and Joe Knott. Well, now Gary St. Amant decides that perhaps trying to get around the outside may not bode too well for tire wear or anything else, so he's trying to find a spot in front of Mike Eddy. Of course, Mike Eddy not willing to relinquish that. Gary St. Amant now caught moving backwards through the field as Brad Loney in the number 33 makes his way around, pushing St. Amant finally, who gets a spot ahead of Glenn Allen Jr. in 5th. He was patient. The big question was how long would the tires last? Goodyear brought a compound specifically designed for this new asphalt. Again, it is 3/4 of a second faster than it previously was, and we may see some
nose-to-tail racing here early, Brian, but as the afternoon wears on, don't go away, because it will get good. It will get side-by-side. We've already seen that in our 50-lap races.
Well, the cool temperature here will also bode well for tire wear situations. If it was a lot hotter, the tires would go away quicker. And here is the number 81 car of Harold Fair. We have seen both the number 81 car and his other machine, the 93 car of Bobby Archer, in the qualifiers, both of them throwing some smoke. So they seem to have a problem, perhaps, with the overflow on the oil tank under hard G-forces. That could be spitting some oil out there that's getting toasted and throwing some smoke.
I'm not sure that's the only problem. Archer, in fact, dropped out of his qualifying race. Fair ran to the conclusion, but it still does not look good as we look at a battle shaping up for second position.
Oh, second position, because Jeff Neal is just about run off and hid there. You saw him disappearing out of the side of the screen, as now Bob Seneker has his hands full with the number 88 Pontiac of Mike Eddy. Jeff Neal running off there about 6 or 7 car lengths ahead of the battle for second place.
And we see Brad Loney coming into frame as he ran high in his qualifying race. Exciting race with Scott Hansen. And this is, again, Jeff Neal. You can see the margin that he has as they come off turn number 4.
And you had the exact view that the fans did from our fan cam in the grandstands here at the Columbus Motor Speedway. There's Sensiba trying to go around the outside in a great race for 7th place. Scott Hansen in the 53, and there's Sensiba, last year's Rookie of the Year winner, 48. Joe Knott comes through on the inside, and Joe Knott has got a terrific crew put together under the tutelage of Chris Bradley, crew chief for Glenn Allen Jr. last year, who had so much success with that young driver. He has thrown his hat into the ring for another young driver, 23-year-old Joe Knott.
Dave Sensiba, you can see, just sliding back as Hansen is now eased away from him. Sensiba knows he has nowhere to go. You can see Jay Summers in the black, car number 22, and Kent Stauffer right behind. Sensiba has to stay to the high side, Brian. There's no way for him to duck to the bottom. He's got to try to make it work. You can see a wisp of smoke coming off the left rear corner. I think it was a little bit of tire smoke. And now Scott Hansen is drifted high in car number 53 and opened the door for the kid from Ohio, Joe Knott.
So Knott in the Ravy Ford Thunderbird, the Alan Knott Toyota-sponsored machine, runs off now away from Scott Hansen, who seems to be destined at this point anyway to take more of a high line, at least in that turn 3-4 area there. We'll have to see how that develops. Now he's trying to hold off Summers in the 22 car, and Dave Sensiba falls in behind. Joe Knott heading for the leaders right now.
Scott Hansen's car did not seem to be handling all that well in his qualifying race. I'm sure they made some adjustments. Look at him trying to run right down on the bottom groove, and all of a sudden that big lead Jeff Neal had evaporated.
And Bob Seneker looked like he got a fender on the back end of the number 75 car, and Jeff Neal goes all the way around, finally gets a little bit of tire spin there in the grass and heads back into action there. Bob Seneker recovered much more quickly and fell into 5th position, while Jeff Neal will show up now on the leaderboard back in about 16th or 17th position when we restart this. There's Bob Seneker in the number 84, the ASA's winningest driver, and there is the 7-time champion of the American Speed Association. They're all going at it here at Columbus Motor Speedway. Join us.
This is Dale Jarrett's NASCAR. You can't get his engine, you can't get his tires, but you can get his motor oil. Texaco Havoline Formula 3. It's formulated to control volatility and fight oil vaporization. It provides complete protection, and it's the exact same Havoline you can buy right off the shelf, which, by the way, is a heck of a lot easier.
Add more life to your car. Take it to the stars.
Dear Thompsons, as a contractor, I depend on Thompson's Water Seal waterproofer. But when my crew ran out,
Found this on the truck.
they finished with another brand. And I hear about it. Now, you can see the Thompson's working. The other side,
Soaks up water like a sponge.
Avoid costly mistakes. Other brands don't work like Thompson's. Some hardly work at all.
Thompson's works for me.
Ray Hayes.
Also protect with Thompson's Stain, the only stain with Thompson's Water Seal waterproofer.
The TNN Bass Tournament of Champions contest. And now we're offering you a chance to compete at home on Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis. You could win some great prizes like Tracker Bass boats, Team Daiwa fishing gear, Lowrance fish finders, Bass Pro Shop gift certificates, and more. To enter and compete, you'll need the game, and you're gonna need the rules. Get the game wherever Nintendo and Sega Genesis are sold. To get the rules, send a self-addressed envelope to this address, or call 612-467-1400, or visit your local participating retailer.
Welcome back, everybody. 19 laps down of this 200-lap feature event here in the Buckeye 300. There is the leader, Mike Eddy, who inherited the lead after Jeff Neal and Bob Seneker decided to have a little set-to here. Rob?
Well, I don't know how to comment on who was at fault there. It did look like that Jeff Neal might have lost the rear end on the race car just a touch, because Bob Seneker closed in very rapidly on him. Let's look from another angle. Well, Bob's already there, and it's already blue paint on yellow as they come through turn number 4. As Jeff does his pirouette, I just knew we were going to pile up about 10 cars. Watch the move. Well, we stopped it too soon. Mike Eddy made a brilliant move to not get involved, and that's the thing of which championships are made. There's Jeff Neal. Now, where does Mike Eddy go? To the high side, and he's gone.
Followed by Brad Loney and the rest of the field, and that's the way they are right now as the green flag comes back out. Mike Eddy ahead of the young driver, Brad Loney, the number 33 car. Then it's Gary St. Amant, fastest qualifier, set outside of row 1. And Glenn Allen Jr. in the number 15 car sits in 5th spot. Bob Seneker, well, whether he contributed to or caused the spin out of Jeff Neal remains to be decided, but he nevertheless has tucked himself into 5th spot, just ahead of Joe Knott in the 48 car. Your leader is Mike Eddy, wearing 8-8 on the side of his car, going for an 8th championship in the American Speed Association, an unprecedented 8th title in all of motorsports.
And Jay Sauter just left the racetrack. It looks like his day is a short one. Number 81, Harold Fair, was black flag. There's Brad Loney in car number 33. He and Mike Eddy had a whale of a battle in their qualifying race. I wondered, Brad had lost his crew chief over the winter. They filled in admirably with another guy that was on the crew. A little different look on the number, but Loney is strong here this weekend.
Well, you mentioned Harold Fair a moment ago, and we saw his number 81 car smoking the trim class build-a-mold machine. He is down with Ralph Shaheen. Ralph?
You can see, Brian, they're working on the back end of Harold Fair's car. Harold, what's wrong with it?
Well, we broke a transmission in the qualifying race, and apparently the seal popped out of the new transmission, didn't have a safety clamp on it. It popped out, lost the fluid, and it started smoking. They're trying to get it repaired now so we can get back out there.
Early season blues for the Pontiac of Harold Fair.
Mike Eddy in the black 88 continues to lead, being challenged by the young and very aggressive Brad Loney and his number 33 machine with the Flex Steel Winnebago H&W Chevrolet colors on it. Picked up a new associate sponsorship also with STP for the year. We'll be talking more about that perhaps later on in the season. 28 laps down out of 200 that will be contested here for this feature event. The Buckeye 300 made up of 2 50-lap qualifiers plus a 200-lap feature, and that's the way it sits right now with 3 cars trying to run off and high. A little surprise at Glenn Allen Jr. as A.J. Cooper comes to a halt on the outside of the racetrack up in turn number 2, and I'm a little bit surprised that Glenn Allen Jr. has dropped back away from the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place battle. There's the 71 machine of A.J.
I think that's pretty much by design. The guys don't know what to expect in terms of tire wear, and I think that was very much planned by Glenn Allen Jr.
Once again, let's go to Ralph Shaheen for some more word on Jay Sauter, who you mentioned earlier dropped out of the race. Ralph?
Well, Brian, they were having troubles with the car. The carburetor was flooding a little bit on them, so they had to fix that, and they got that all squared away. He's back out on the racetrack now, a couple laps down.
Well, now, Ralph, your job is to find out what happened to A.J. Cooper, who just pulled over and parked on the side of the racetrack. As we get ready to watch some very important messages here, we'll unscramble some of the mysteries and solve them for you when we come back.
If you're looking for a reliable place to service your car or truck, I've got great news for you. It's a Pep Boys Automotive Super Center. No matter what you drive, their ASC certified technicians are here when you need them, day or night, even on Sunday. For Raybestos brakes, TRW rack and pinion repair, diagnostic tune-ups, even air conditioning. For dealer quality service at prices you can afford, come to Pep Boys and drive away happy.
Monroe developed SensorTrack shocks to smooth out the road for a comfortable ride. But SensorTrack doesn't stop there. It's the only shock that also gives you extra control when you need it most. SensorTrack shocks and struts, only by Monroe, for comfort and control. Get SensaTrack shocks. Call 1-800-STRUT now for a Monroe ride expert near you.
Next Saturday, the NASCAR All-Pro boys are back, and these guys lay it on the line every time they start them up. If they finish well, they keep on racing. If not, they may not make it back. So if you want to see some real guys doing some real racing, check this out. From South Carolina's Greenville Pickens Speedway, it's the Slim Jim All-Pro Domino's Pizza 200, live Saturday on TNN Motorsports.
The yellow flag still waving, but the green flag is about to come out. There you're taking a look at the top 10 in the field right now for the Buckeye 300. A.J. Cooper and the Morton Enterprises National Burn Foundation Ford Thunderbird parked it up against the wall. We'll figure out exactly why here in just a few minutes, but that is why the caution flag came out. Also swinging up into the pits, and the pits are on the outside of the racetrack, was Jeff Neal. A number 75 car went out there after a set two there with Bob Seneker. The green flag coming back out again on Mike Eddy and the number 88 who continues to lead this race. And there is Brad Loney in the number 33 car. Behind him there, pushing him pretty hard. Gary St. Amant now also in a little bit of a battle with Glenn Allen Jr. in the 15. There's Seneker in the blue 84 coming back to it. And there is some debris on the racetrack that will have to be dealt with before this race could really get underway. Now that's real live, honest to goodness debris, and they haven't yellow flagged anything for that fender laying out there on the track, Rob.
As things remain under single file, Brian, let me give, the yellow is going to come out. I wanted to give a quick rundown of the drivers that did not make the race. Brett Bell, Rick Beebe, Bobby Archer, Cindy Peterson, Todd Oliver, Steve Shive. Those are all rookies, as was Kirk Rogers and Brandon Sperling. Ray Skillman did not qualify, nor did Dave Anspaugh, Randy Larson, Larry Conroy, Steve Barnes, or Donnie Varco.
Well, there's the fender about to leave with a little bit of help right now. We got a quick minute. Let's check in once again with Ralph Shaheen, who's got a story about the number 75 car that went from first to next to last real quick, Ralph.
Well, that would be Jeff Neal, and Jeff had a problem with the car being too tight, so they came in and changed both rear tires, and that loosened him up. A.J. Cooper has brought his number 71 Ford in here, and A.J., you got the helmet off. It looks terminal?
Yeah, I think we broke something in the transmission or rear end. It just started vibrating going down the front straightaway and just rolled over.
It's frustrating, these early season blues that a lot of drivers are suffering through. Just on the other side of A.J. Cooper is Jay Sauter's car that is back into the pit area. Problems with that car continue. As well, Papardo changing tires, gentlemen, as we go back to green.
Racing here in the AC-Delco Challenge Series as the 1995 season is some 39 laps old right now. And Mike Eddy still leading. Brad Loney out front. Gary St. Amant, Glenn Allen Jr., and Bob Seneker the top 5 in this race as they stand right now. Joe Knott, the number 48 machine, and Scott Hansen back there. Dave Sensiba, and then the number 22 machine there of Summers. That's pretty much the front end of the field. We've seen a great run up from behind by the number 18 car, Mike Miller. Again, my favorite. I've made no attempt to hide that. He has run from 25th to 12th position and is challenging among the lead pack. Brian Reffner in the number 5 car has run from 27th to 14th position. So a couple of drivers making great runs from the back of the field while a few have had their misfortunes. And Jeff Neal in particular has gone from the front to the back of the bunch.
Tom Jones showing a lot of smoke in the Phil Pro Pontiac as Brad Loney closes in on the back bumper of Mike Eddy's car number 88. Now you can see them off turn number 4. Lap after lap, they're electing completely different lines through that corner. Brad runs a slightly higher line around this racetrack that puts additional weight, therefore additional heat, into the right front tire, and it could cost him later on. We'll have to see.
Scott Hansen trying to make a move on Dave Sensiba right there. He seems to have the handling problems that were bothering him a little bit earlier in the race well in check right now. Behind him is the 22 machine of Summers trying to make a move on Scott Hansen. So Jay Summers going after the 53 car, who in turn is now moving around to the outside. Looks like Summers will get inside there of Scott Hansen, and it will be the number 22 car that will head towards Dave Sensiba again. Hansen apparently, just as soon as I said he had the handling troubles figured out, well, perhaps not.
Well, he is going backwards. At the start of this race, he moved quickly up to 5th position, and now he's dropped a couple of spots in just the last few laps, relinquishing first 6th to Sensiba, and now 7th to the leading rookie in this race, Jay Summers.
Continue to watch the battle in 6th and 7th spot there. The 5 lead cars have kind of run off and hit. Well, 3 of them have anyway. Mike Eddy just rock steady Mike Eddy up front in the number 88 car. Brad Loney trying him on the outside a couple of times, trying him on the inside, and as you said, just might be doing nothing more than wearing out a bunch of tires trying to chase after the 88 car. Gary St. Amant just driving along back there, watching the two of them, and then there's some space back to 4th position in the racetrack. Earlier we saw some trouble for the number 0 car, the Zero Hero Tom Jones. He's down there with Ralph, which of course is no particular honor when the race is still going on. Ralph?
Yeah, you can see them working on the rear end of the car. Tom's still sitting in it. Tom, what's wrong with the car?
We had a broken air line or one oil line before. We fixed it. I think they put too much oil in it.
Tom Jones sits here patiently while the crew works feverishly on the backside of the car.
As they let the car down off the jack right now after having taken some excess fluid out of the race car. Tom Jones, we will expect to see him back in action here. Down several laps, though, as you might expect.
Mike Eddy putting a lap on the racing surgeon, Dr. Yale Conley, who did some wrist surgery on the racing school principal, Dave Anspaugh, over the winter. Anspaugh's now a doctor also, but he's one of those guys with a PhD rather than an MD.
There's one more, isn't there? Doesn't Dave Sensiba have a degree as well?
Dr. Dave? I don't think so.
I thought you said that yesterday.
Doctor of Dollars after winning the $40,000 rookie prize last year, maybe.
And working well in this race right now. He continues to be among the contenders there behind Mike Eddy, of course, in the 88 car who is leading. Bob Seneker came out of that little duet there with Jeff Neal a lot better than Jeff did. Jeff is having to work his way up from the back of the field while Bob Seneker sits in contention right now up front in 5th position. Mike Eddy going around the outside and putting a lap on the gentle giant Dennis Lampman there. And so they've already run into traffic as Brad Loney now tries to find a way around the number 9 car as well.
I told you a little earlier, I thought Glenn Allen was letting the lead trio get away by design. Now I'm not sure, as it looks like Mike Eddy, Brad Loney, and Gary St. Amant have put significant distance between themselves and the 4th running car of Glenn Allen. But Allen is not getting much heat from Bob Seneker. And Seneker, if anyone, knows how to pace himself for a race. It's still very, very early.
Well, maybe young Glenn Allen Jr. has learned, taken a page out of the Bob Seneker book on how to win ASA races, and he's being patient as well, figuring, well, you know, one caution flag and I'm right back up there again. The gaps will all close up. And we've seen several caution flags in the race, and it's not out of the question that another one could come out here and improve the situation very quickly for Glenn Allen Jr. The situation that has degraded very slowly could improve quickly with a caution flag.
This is the first ASA race of the season, but the drivers running 1st and 3rd have had some success in the off-season. Mike Eddy lived a charmed life in Florida, winning 6 of 7 races in Volusia County in February, and Gary St. Amant won the prestigious Snowball Derby in Pensacola, also back in the month of January.
With 60 laps down in this 200-lap final of the Buckeye 300, the fans are looking on with great anticipation, and we are too.
Now at Pep Boys, get any 4 of our 35,000-mile all-season steel-belted tires at an incredible low $99.96. That's right, any size, any set of 4, just $99.96 at Pep Boys now. No matter what you drive, Pep Boys motor oil meets or exceeds virtually all manufacturer's specifications. Now only $70, just $9.48 a case. That's right, $70 at Pep Boys.
Coast to coast, from small community to urban America, by building on the success of local independent businesses, this once little-known company has quietly grown surprisingly big. In fact, today it serves you at over 13,000 locations across America, more than any of these companies you already know. Citgo, the sign of quality.
Test Magazine, tonight on TNN. Due to live race coverage, Trucks and Tractor Power will be presented at a different time. 4:30 p.m., 3:30 Central, today on TNN Motorsports.
Unbelievable, spectacular, breathtaking crash impact. 60 minutes of blazing crash action in this special edition 2-volume set. See outrageous motocross and road racing action, sprint cars and outlaws, Grand Prix, stock cars, monster trucks, powerboats, and more. Only $19.95. This exclusive 2-tape set is jam-packed with magnificent racing and crash action footage featuring top drivers from around the world. Order now and get absolutely free. Havoc 1, over 45 minutes of rare footage, including some of the most thrilling and horrifying moments that made early racing history. And you'll get this incredible 2-tape offer, plus your Havoc video free. 3 tapes that'll blow you away. Guaranteed or your money back.
To order, call toll-free 1-800-544-6664. That's 1-800-544-6664. Or send check or money order for $19.95 plus $3.95 for shipping and handling.
Motorhome facilities for Group 5 Sports and the AC-Delco Challenge Series are provided by Winnebago Industries. For more information about Winnebago, call 1-800-643-4892. Winnebago Motorsports with us in more ways than one here at the AC-Delco Challenge Series. There's Mike Eddy holding on to the lead. The number 87 car of Tony Raines has just had a lap put on it. And now Brad Loney in the number 33 trying to find his way around Tony Raines as well. With 72 laps in the record book right now, Raines holding on to what looks like second spot, but in fact, he's a lap down.
Tony Raines was working on Ted Smokestad to pick up a position, trying to put some daylight between himself and Mike Eddy. They made contact, and Eddy got a little sideways. Loney was almost able to take over the lead in the process, but he settles in behind it. Gary St. Amant just lurking, waiting for a mistake, I think, by either Loney or Eddy, and an opportunity to capitalize.
Part of that focus that we spoke of with Gary St. Amant, maybe he's focused much further down the road in this AC-Delco Challenge Series toward a championship. That is what he has said, and perhaps laying back, waiting, and watching is part of that focus. Now, just a few minutes ago, while we were watching commercial, while you were watching the commercial break back home, we were watching a battle for 9th place. Scott Hansen, the number 53, Wisconsin Aviation Machine, started 9th. Mike Miller, the number 18, and that is the Atlanta Communications Pontiac, started 25th. And there was the pass, taking Brian Reffner with him. So Scott Hansen, who was desperately trying to hold on to the 9th position that he started in, has been passed by 2 drivers, one of whom started 25th, the other 27th. Clearly, Mike Miller and Brian Reffner moving towards the front, while Scott Hansen continues to experience troubles in the number 53 machine.
Brian Reffner getting off to a rocky start in his sophomore season, had a poor qualifying run yesterday and got tangled with somebody else early in his qualifying race, lost the back bumper, and it relegated him to a finish deep among the finishers of that race. He was added to the starting grid, but as you mentioned, coming from 27th to now run up in the 9th position.
There are battles going on all over the racetrack, some of them working in traffic as well. Mike Eddy has cleared himself of all the traffic, but not for long, and it's going to be interesting because the next car that Mike Eddy will be approaching, and you just saw it briefly there, is the number 75 machine of Jeff Neal. Jeff, of course, spinning out earlier, going in for a little bit of reset on the setup on the car. It was a little bit tight, and the Split-Fire All-City Chevrolet about to get lapped and trying not to by Mike Eddy. There are the two of them right now. Mike Eddy, the leader in the race. Jeff Neal, the tail end of the field right now on this Columbus Motor Speedway.
As we continue to watch Mike Eddy lead, we'll remind you that Brad Loney runs second. Gary St. Amant is third. Glenn Allen Jr. is in 4th position, right ahead of Bob Seneker. In 6th spot is Joe Knott in car number 48. 7th is Dave Sensiba in car number 4. And Scott Hansen continues to go backward, and isn't that an interesting battle for position? Because that car number 78 is the one that Hansen drove when he left Jerry Gunderman at the midpoint of 1994. He's now back with Gunderman, and Holtzhausen has taken over the car that Hansen vacated.
And Scott Hansen, of course, behind the wheel of a Thunderbird. There is the Thunderbird of number 78 there of Steve Holtzhausen, who earned a victory last year, pitched a shutout, as we said. A little bit later on, we'll be talking about the winning move of this Buckeye 300. Last year, the winning move for Steve Holtzhausen was when Roger Slack dropped the green flag. He led 400 out of 400 laps to win at Anderson.
Of course, the first race of the year last year or an early race was pretty exciting too, when Butch Miller passed Jay Sauter on the last turn of the last lap for the winning move. So it doesn't matter. You never can afford to walk away from the television set. It can happen at any time.
The first lap to the last. You stay glued to the screen because anything can happen, as you said. Here is another Mike Eddy battle in traffic there as he's working on.
And Dave Sensiba is off the pace. Car number 4, Dave Sensiba, has come to a crawl out of turn number 3. The yellow flag is waved by official starter Roger Slack, and a couple of drivers almost collect him. as Sensitive has got some serious problems. We had seen a lot of smoke out of that car in the middle of the turns, which very often indicates that the rear end has a problem in that race car. I'm sure Ralph he's probably already there, may already even know.
Well, he's certainly on his way, and there is the leader, Mike Eddy, staying out of trouble. And the only one giving him any trouble is the number 33, Brad Loney. We'll be back to the Buckeye 300 in just a moment.
A safari rarely lasts longer than a few weeks, unless it's a safari maintained with genuine AC oil filters, because over hill, dale and wadi, no other filter can track down, trap and capture more dirt. So AC oil filters keep your engine in the hunt for a longer life. AC-Delco. It's like buying time.
Special rebates on AC plugs, oil and air filters every day at Nationwide.
Mamas and papas, sisters, brothers too. Day's a long time and short for all you gotta do. Day and night, it's always right, it's everything a meal should be. Everybody needs a little KFC. Share a meal or kitchen's yours, it's everything you want more. We've got the perfect recipe for sitting down like family. Smile, you could see it's everything a meal should be. Everybody needs a little KFC.
Monroe developed SensaTrack shocks to smooth out the road for a comfortable ride. But SensaTrack doesn't stop there. It's the only shock that also gives you extra control when you need it most. SensaTrack shocks and struts, only by Monroe, for comfort and control.
Concerned about your family's safety? Then note that Subaru Legacy wagons, like Volvo wagons, come with many safety features, plus one even Volvo doesn't offer. Subaru all-wheel drive, which automatically transfers power from the wheels that slip to the wheels that grip. One reason, perhaps, why the Legacy wagon outsells all Volvo wagons combined. For true safety isn't just helping you survive an accident, it's helping you avoid one. For a limited time, get 1.9% financing or lease for just $199 a month.
How would you like to really be a part of the race team? Well, Racing Electronics, the official communications equipment supplier to the American Speed Association, is giving away a Unit Bearcat scanner along with a 1-year's racer frequency membership on each ASA telecast. That's each and every time we're on the air, you have a chance to win. To enter this drawing, send your name and address on a postcard to Racing Electronics Box GFS, 8701 Mallard Creek Road, Charlotte, North Carolina, or the address on your screen.
And they even work in the North Pole, because I feel like we're about 2/3 of the way there today. The spotters did look cold, didn't they?
A lot of folks in the stands here with the scanners on, and one of the members of Ricochet, Ralph Shaheen's crew, has got a scanner because that helps him nose out the stories down on pit road. He's got another one, Ralph.
Gee, just when I thought I was going to be able to fake and pretend like I knew everything. Now you got to tell them I have a scanner to help me out with. Thanks, Trevor. Well, problems down here for Dave Sensitive, the 1994 Rookie of the Year, is up on the jack stand. What's the problem, Dave?
Well, Rob, this West Michigan Chevy Lane Automotive was running good today, and I think we broke a drive shaft or spur gears. They're checking it out right now.
We can also tell you that Scott Hansen's car was real tight. He came in, took on some new tires on the right side of his car. Todd Forbes' car came in. He's having a miss in the engine, plus he had a tire going down. They took care of both of those problems. The crew continues to work. I'm Dave Sensible's entry.
Hey, before we go back to green, I want to extend some congratulations. We talk about our producer, Joel McKee, and our director, Gary Clem, being the best in the business. Well, that's no hype. We understand that Gary has been noted as the Distinguished Alumni of the Year from the Telecommunications Department of Ball State University. Guess who one of his classmates was who's also won that award?
You got me.
David Letterman.
Oh!
He's in some fast company, isn't he?
I'll tell you what.
It must be good to be in there with our Gary Clem, eh?
He's in fast company with trying to keep track of you, me, and Ralph Shaheen and all the camera positions out there on the racetrack. We're back under green. Jeff Neal, of course, a lap down, running side by side with Gary St. Amant. Out front, it is still Mike Eddy and Brad Loney. And that is pretty much a case of, well, age and treachery outdoing youth and enthusiasm for the moment, at least, as Mike Eddy.
Oh, and Jeff Neal gets spun this time by car number 7. Gary St. Amant sits right in the middle of the racetrack. And cars going high and low. Jeff trying to get it re-fired, and he's dropped down right in front of Jay Sauter and Bill Baird. And again, Jeff has been the victim of some bad luck, but it's got a two-sided, it's got a silver lining to it, Brian, because he could have been nailed on each occasion, and he's been able to keep going. And he was trying to get another shot at getting his lead lap back. Gary St. Amant was trying to put him a lap down. And we understand he had gotten a lap penalty because he had passed the leader after the yellow flag came out.
That is why, well, we saw him stopped in front of Roger Slack's position here on the start-finish line, and that's exactly what was going on, though. Bad luck continues to follow misfortune for Jeff Neal. And here's another look at just exactly what happened. There's Mike Eddy and Brad Loney coming through, and there's Jeff Neal facing definitely the wrong way and pouring a lot of smoke. Boy, he got it stopped in the middle of the racetrack. Got to give him credit for that, and for the rest of these drivers for getting around a car broadside in this very small racetrack.
First one on the scene was Glenn Allen in car number 15. That might be a good candidate for the wins-winning move, the way he went around Jeff Neal, just barely avoiding contact.
The omniscient Ralph Shaheen has more. Ralph?
Well, we're waiting for Jeff Neal to make his way around to the pits. They kind of have to loop around here. It's sort of a wild parking lot type of configuration back here at Columbus. We do want to tell you that he was penalized, but Jeff radioed into the ASA officials and said, I was just waiting for the pace car. They agreed with that and let him get his lap back. Now the problem for Jeff is due to the incident, he's changing right side tires to get himself back on some good rubber. Yale Conley pitted. His car's been hung up in neutral. His crew is working on the number 3 machine.
Neutral is the gear that doesn't work real well when you're out on the racetrack.
And our Canadian official starter was just doing a little skating. There's some fluid. You can see right in front of him there's a shiny line, and apparently somebody dumped some fluid out on the racetrack.
Well, they're going around with the oil dry, trying to get rid of it. And while the track crew works on the track, here's a quick look at the top 10 for the Buckeye 300, and we'll be right back with the second half of this race right after this.
Red means go to your Honda dealer for red hot days. Got it. Take a demo ride. Get 9.9 APR and 0 down financing. Trade in that old helmet of yours. Pick up a free t-shirt with $5 purchase and see what's hot for $95. So get going, because after April 30th, red means stop.
Some people can't afford to worry about the fuel in their tank. And when it comes to consistency and quality, their demands are among the toughest in the world. That's why most major domestic and international airlines depend on Citgo. And with more than 13,000 locations across America, you can depend on Citgo too. Citgo, the sign of quality.
It's 31 races, and you've got to believe you're going to win them all. Not one, not two, but every single one. So you better make sure you've got the best crew, the best car, and the best tires. Goodyear Eagles, made by people who want to win just as badly as you do.
Goodyear, #1 in racing, #1 in tires.
I've won 7 NASCAR championships with Goodyear. That ought to tell you something.
If you're looking for a reliable place to service your car or truck, I've got great news for you.
Now at Pep Boys, air conditioning system check for only $19.99.
Come to Pep Boys and drive away happy.
Chances are it will outlast your car and your furnace and your roof. There's no telling what your Moen faucet might outlast. Moen, buy it for looks, buy it for life.
For all of our young racing fans, if you have a question about racing or about your favorite driver, our colleague Josh Duvall will be here again this year with a Young Racers feature. Just send your questions to Young Racers, P.O. Box 26792, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28221. That's it on your screen. And Josh will have one of our ASA racers answer your question on the air. The American Dream alive and well in the AC-Delco Challenge Series. Let's go once again down to our Dreamboat pit reporter, Ralph Shaheen.
The big problem why everybody's spinning here today, Brian, they're doing it early. They're taking on right side tires because of the cool temperatures. Everybody guessed on their chassis setups, but it was even cooler and cloudier than they expected it to be this morning. So if they're off on their chassis setup, the car ends up being tight. Not loose, but too tight. So everybody's trying to loosen the car up a little bit. They'll do that 2 ways. They'll either make an adjustment to the chassis by messing with the wedge, or they can also play with their air pressures. That's about it. If you didn't guess right, you're pretty much stuck with it at this point.
Well, and we still have not yet determined who among the leaders will make a pit stop. We've reached the halfway point. Some had said we know they can go all the way on fuel. They would stop if they needed tires, but we may see 200 laps without a stop. And there's Joe Knott. He's car number 48 up into the 5th position. As just before we went to caution. We can take a look now at the top 20. Mike Eddy, Brad Loney, and boy, they've been that way for a long time, first and second.
And there you can see for the first time in the top 10, Mike Miller and Brian Reffner, who we mentioned a couple of times, ran all the way from the back of the field, 25th and 27th starting positions to get where they are. Tony Roper starts the list in the second 10 of this race. And we see some of the guys who have been having trouble. Scott Hansen, the 53, started 9th. He's moving back through the field. Ted Smokestad, the final car on the lead lap, in 16th spot.
He did go a lap down just before we went to that caution, so Smokestad will be 1 lap down in car number 32, which would leave 15 cars, I think, now on the lead lap.
I can always count on Rob Albright to correct me if I say something wrong.
No, it's never me anymore. It's the Torch. I used to be able to do it in my head. It's the Torch Miller.
That's right.
He's our brain. I told him this morning we showed up, we didn't have our Torch package of all the information we need to do the race, and I got spoiled. He's the guy who needs to do the homework.
Well, for all of you at home that are fans of the Know-It-All brothers, Torch, Scorch, and Zorch, we have Torch and Scorch with us this weekend. Of course, they are our statisticians here on the Group 5 Sports television broadcast of the AC-Delco Challenge Series. The American Speed Association has its own scorers. They're up here in the booth with us, too. And we take our information from our own scorers, who, of course, verify it with the official ASA scores. And amazingly enough, these guys do agree with one another most of the time. They seem to be watching the same race.
Most of the time. As we get ready to go back to green, again, this is the 6th year of AC-Delco's involvement, the 5th year for television. We're excited that they continue to be involved in helping these guys chase that great American dream of being the short track stock car king of the United States. And right now, it's Mike Eddy gunning for an 8th championship and a 2nd successive win here at Columbus.
The premier short track racing series in these United States is the American Speed Association's presentation. We have 16 telecasts for you this year, 18 total races on the schedule, and Mike Eddy going after an unprecedented 8th title in all of motorsports. Of course, he was equaled this year by his teammate Dale Earnhardt down south, and now the two of them are going for an 8th title. Who will get it first? Well, we got a little bit of an advantage, because if Mike Eddy takes his title, we finish our season just a few weeks before they do. So if Mike Eddy wins his 8th championship, it will be the first driver ever to win 8 championships in any motorsport.
Not before long before the last caution, Joe Knott had gotten around Bob Seneker, and after the green was redisplayed, Seneker got out of shape, and here's how that happened. Look at Jay Summers going to the low side. Seneker drifts up high. Summers makes slight contact. Can't blame Jay for that one. He maintained his line down at the bottom, allows Seneker to get the car righted.
And Mike Miller hard on the brakes, trying to avoid the two of them. And Mike Miller, of course, we mentioned before, he has now moved himself up a couple more spots in this race and is definitely heading for the front. Question is, will he be wearing out his tires a little quicker than everybody else, running harder than they are? Or will he be able to hold on as some of the other drivers? Well, they're balancing the issue right now, whether to stop for fuel and or tires before this one ends. We're 110 laps into a 200-lap race. And Mike Eddy, who took the lead early, has held on to it ever since.
And maybe the little bump and run was a wake-up call for Bob Seneker. He's retaking it. Not. And Joe gets tangled up behind the lapped car, Ted Smokestad, car number 32, and loses a couple more spots, this time to Jay Summers and that charging Mike Miller.
And there's Harold Fair in the 81 car back in after fixing his mechanical problems earlier. There's the 18 of Mike Miller, 81, the build-a-mold Pontiac. And here's the battle for 3rd now. We've seen these two running 3rd and 4th. Gary St. Amant, the number 7 Wins machine, and the number 15 car of Glenn Allen Jr. And he drives that CarQuest Eaglewood Construction, the new sponsor for him, Pontiac.
At the midpoint of this race, we've had 2 different leaders, just a single lead change as Mike Eddy went to the front and stayed there. Currently 16 cars showing on the lead lap, 5 caution periods for a total of 26 laps. And what a great battle that is for 3rd position between a couple of really good friends. Glenn Allen Jr., and of course from Cincinnati, he was a sports standout there in high school. And Gary St. Amant, everybody loves him. He and his family, a very prominent family here in the Columbus area. And Gary is probably the man of choice here today if you were to take a poll among the racing fans. If not, maybe then the youngster Joe Knott. But Glenn Allen also earned his first victory here, and we've got several cars together coming out of turn number 4. Eddie Sharp tangles with Scott Hansen and Todd Forbes. Sharp has a left rear tire that has been cut down, and Dennis Lampman was involved as well in car number 9, and he sustained some damage.
Dennis Lampman sustained a lot of damage during the 1994 season. And it looks as though 1995 is starting off much the same way. There's the 50 car of rookie driver Eddie Sharp, who has signed on as a contender for that $50,000 Pat Shower Memorial Rookie of the Year prize, won last year by Dave Sensiva. It was worth $40,000 last year. It's gone up, as has all the prize money, the purses in the American Speed Association, the AC-Delco Challenge Series. AC-Delco putting up more money this year, $3.3 million in prizes and contingencies available for these drivers. An American dream, alive and well, you'd have to say so, as these drivers are all going for a quite big purse. Let's take another look at it here if we can.
And you can see there is Dennis Lampman, Eddie Sharp in tow. Sharp gets into the back end of Lampman as Brian Refner was trying to go to the high side of the racetrack.
Tom Jones gets around. Oh, and no, that's not Tom Jones. That's the 37 car there.
What a disappointment for Eddie Sharp. He'd had a quiet but consistent run here this afternoon. As we've mentioned, he's a protege of Johnny Benson. That race car last year was driven to the championship by Butch Miller. And you can see Lampman going all the way around and hits the left rear corner of Eddie Sharp's car number 50. Now, whether or not there was significant damage or if it's simply a bent wheel and a flat left rear tire, we're going to find out. We'll see how quickly Eddie comes back onto the racetrack.
Well, we'll take a cut away from the action here while we're under caution and let them clean up the racetrack a little bit. Fans are looking on. We hope you are too. Join us in a moment.
What vitamins do for your body, VitaWins does for your car.
I'm Rick Benjamin. On the PM edition of TNN Race Day, we'll have highlights from the Winston Cup battle on the short track at Martinsville, the Indy cars on the mile at Nazareth, the trucks, ASA, and the NHRA, all Sunday night on Race Day.
All you need to know about motorsports. Race Day. Tonight, 7:30 p.m., 6:30 Central, only on TNN Motorsports.
Welcome back, everybody, and thanks for joining these folks at the Buckeye 300, presented by Nationwide here at Columbus Motor Speedway in Ohio. The car's circulating under caution here with 119 laps gone. Ralph Shaheen has an update on the latest altercation out on the racetrack. Ralph?
Luckily for both Eddie Sharp and Dennis Lampman, the damage wasn't too extensive. It was tires for both of them and a little sheet metal on the 9 machine of Dennis Lampman. They fixed that, squared both those cars up, and they're back out.
Of course, sheet metal figuratively speaking, because the ASA cars run Kevlar body panels and not metal. In fact, part of what makes this racing so accessible and affordable for a lot of the teams, they don't have to replace expensive sheet metal. Rather, they use the more inexpensive molded bodies on these cars. We're back to green flag racing now with Mike Eddy. Who else up front? Brad Loney has tried several times to get around Mike Eddy, but seems to have satisfied himself with settling in on second spot and hoping for an infrequent and uncharacteristic mistake by the 7-time ASA champion.
And I had to get a kick out of the press release we got from Brad Loney's folks. I mean, they're one of the most prolific in terms of getting us information, and I like the way they now promo themselves. The fastest Chevy in ASA racing. Well, they're certainly backing that up today. It has seemed, in fact, that over the last couple of years, drivers have opted to go, if they're GM, for the Pontiacs, and then there are about an equal number of Fords in competition. Mike Eddy, of course, has always been in that Pontiac, at least over the last several years, but Loney's sticking with the Chevy, and he's giving them a lot of exposure today. and a great run in car number 33. I still haven't decided whether I like that new number or not yet, though.
Well, you know, they designed that number themselves. They were telling me about it. And Brad Loney, by the way, for those of you that are online on the internet, Brad Loney gets himself out on the internet, on America Online. He's obviously computer literate, and they designed their own number and then put it into the computer and nudged it around a little bit to make it look more like a 3. And they said they're not quite done with it yet. They're still going to play around with the look of that number. I kind of like it, and I told him so.
Brad Loney is an interesting young man. I mean, he's in his late 20s, but he still looks like he's 14. It's the youngest team in the series, average age 26, and he is really lighting it up now, putting the heat on Mike Eddy.
You know, and after all the hype that we got about the youngest team in the American Speed Association, I fully expected, you know, all winter long we've been hearing about his young team, and of course we heard about it last year. I got here this year and expected these guys to be wearing diapers and sucking on pacifiers, for crying out loud. They're a very accomplished race team. They've got a couple of new members, and they've got one guy they call the Human Jack. I mean, this is a big, strong guy, and they don't even need one of those mechanical deals. He just picks the car up and they change the tires.
You know, what's amazing about this bunch is the cohesiveness that they have as a unit. In fact, we understand that they take a break on Thursday nights to go play basketball as a bunch, and that is the thing of which championships are made, Brian. I mean, the thing that has made Mike Eddy so successful is he's got the same cadre of guys that get together every year, and they know they're working for Mike Eddy. Other teams, you'll see a crew chief come and go, different crew members come and go, but you need that consistency of the same players race after race, year after year. And that's why suddenly Brad Loney is now being seen as a possible championship candidate in 95.
Well, he has certainly been on a rapid learning curve, and he has learned well. Very intelligent young man, and obviously has made his mistakes over the years and has learned from all of them, because he is right now, well, the validation comes in the form of racing for the lead in this very first race of the 1995 season against the likes of a Mike Eddy.
And he and Mike are just pulling away from Gary St. Amant. St. Amant has dropped now about 6 car lengths back. Glenn Allen Jr. hasn't appeared to be looking to make a pass. I'm sure he's in communication with his spotter, and that spotter's going to say very quickly, the front 2 are getting away. Glenn, you need to make your move if he has what it takes to make that pass on Gary St. Amant.
A couple of great battles on the racetrack. That for the lead, of course, and we mentioned back here for third place is Gary St. Amant, Glenn Allen Jr., Bob Seneker, Jay Summers, and now Mike Miller nudging his way up in there as Tom Jones, who has been out off the racetrack a couple of times, gets out of the way. Joe Knott coming through. Harold Fair, who has rejoined the races, back there too. There's the race for third spot. There's fifth place, Bob Seneker in the blue 84, and right behind him, Jay Summers in the 22 car. That's a race for third right now.
Hey, listen, only 5 rookies made this race. Jay Summers was one of them, and he is now in 6th position in car number 22. Now, ASA has a limit to the number of races that you can run and still contend for Rookie of the Year. Jay has never competed in more than 5 ASA events. He's been around the series for a long time. He's run periodically since the mid-1980s. He's now hooked up with Junior Hanley, who's a great car builder and a great driver himself. But Hanley now wants to campaign this young driver from Michigan for Rookie of the Year. It looks like he's made an outstanding choice based on today's performance.
Glenn Allen Jr. trying to get around Gary St. Amant, and here's the race for first.
And just as we talk about Summers, he gets tagged from behind in turn number 4 and spins. He'll give up 5th position and a whole lot of others. Nobody is going to hit him, but the yellow comes out once again, and a great run now becomes a frustrating one for Jay Summers in car number 22.
Well, he'll lose about half of the field now, and he'll be much closer to the back of the field than he was just a while ago. He was very close to the front. In fact, as you said, running in 6th spot now. Of course, that position will be inherited by the number 18 car of Mike Miller, and he will have his opportunity to race in that battle, that tight little battle for third place behind the 2 leaders, Mike Eddy and Brad Loney. We'll be back to the Buckeye 300 here. We got 60 more laps to go, and you'll want to be here for every one of them.
It isn't easy winning a championship. One week you're on a super speedway, the next week you're on a short track, or a road course, or something in between. You have to change, you have to adapt, and you have to have the consistency and the technology of Goodyear Eagle tires.
Goodyear, #1 in racing, #1 in tires.
Winning the championship takes consistency, and that takes Goodyear.
Dear Thompsons, I depend on Thompson's Water Seal waterproofer, but when my crew ran out, they finished with another brand. Did I hear about it? But you could see the Thompsons working. The other side, nothing. Thompson's works for me. Ray Hayes.
If you got lots of leisure time and nothing else to do, and wanna be happy as we, just Just grab your hat and get your boots on. Pretty soon you'll be long gone to the cowboy.
Championship Rodeo on TNN tonight. Inside Winston Cup Racing today on TNN Motorsports. Due to TNN Motorsports live race coverage, Truckin' USA will be presented at a different time. 5 p.m. 4 Central today on TNN Motorsports.
Hi, folks. I'm Charlie Chase.
I'm Lori Ann Crook, and Charlie and I want to tell you about a great deal on a trip to Music City, USA.
It's the Opryland USA Passport Package. For just $110, you'll see Music City's best, including 2 days of rides, shows, and fun at Opryland Theme Park.
A Nashville onstage concert featuring one of country's biggest stars.
Reserve seating for the world-famous Grand Ole Opry, or a taping of our favorite show, Music City Tonight.
A day cruise and buffet on the General Jackson.
And the tour of Nashville with Grand Ole Opry's sightseeing tour.
You know, Charlie, this really is a great package.
It really is, and they can even arrange your accommodations at Opryland Hotel, other area hotels, or the KOA campground, located just 4 minutes from Opryland, USA.
All for just $110. Now that's a great deal. So call 615-889-6611 or your local travel professional and order the Opryland USA Passport Package today.
And we'll see you in Music City.
We're still here. They're still under caution, although that's going to change really quick. Now take a look at what's going on right here between Bob Seneker and Glenn Allen Jr. And what's going on?
Seneker made a bump. Now watch this coming out of turn number 4. Glenn Allen says, "Don't do that to me. I don't like that." Let's see if we're going to catch it. I don't know, but he drove Bob right into the grass. There he goes. And a little bit of green stuff. In ASA, you don't run back to the caution, so it's wherever you are on the racetrack when the yellow is displayed. You could be on the backstretch. In fact, flagman Roger Slack decided to let him restart that race side by side. He said it was too close to call as to who was in what position. Glenn Allen Jr. has reasserted himself in 4th position, having now gone back to green.
Well, they were certainly having some discussion about it as they crossed the stripe side by side. That's how Roger Slack put him back out on the racetrack. But Glenn Allen Jr. getting the advantage now. He runs 4th, Seneker 5th. Mike Miller 6th. The 2 leaders continue to be Mike Eddy and, of course, Brad Loney in 2nd spot. Gary St. Amant, fastest qualifier, set outside row 1. As seesawed through the field there, always staying among the leaders, however, and he sits firmly in 3rd right now, but he's getting a little bit of a bump and challenge from Glenn Allen Jr. now.
Brad Loney continues to confound me, Brian. I thought that with him using consistently a slightly higher line than Mike Eddy, that he would have a right front tire gone by now. We're 147 laps, nearly 3/4 of the way into this thing, and he is hanging right with car number 88. And again, after the restart, it's Gary St. Amant that can't keep pace.
Of course, when tires go away, they kind of go away quickly, so things can change quickly for Brad Loney in the last 50 laps of this race. Let's go once again to Ralph Shaheen with an update on Glenn Allen.
You know, what's really interesting, Brian, is that we talked to both crew members of Glenn Allen and Bob Seneker, and they said that both their drivers, even though there's a lot of action going on the track, both drivers are very quiet on the radios, and they're not saying anything about the little skirmish that's going on between the two of them.
Well, they're quiet off the racetrack, too, as a general rule. I mean, neither one of these guys ever find themselves in the middle of controversy. That's kind of what made it interesting. 2 guys that seem to get along great off the racetrack, having just a little fender-to-fender discussion.
Well, it was almost comical because it was at walking speed. I mean, these guys are going 3 miles an hour and bumping. Well, we see a lot of bumping in ASA racing, but we usually see it at racing speeds, not under caution, going around the track at barely a crawl. So it was pretty comical.
And again, Glenn Allen wanting the position, but not wanting to take his buddy out of contention. You can also see in the rear of your frame Mike Miller crawling into the hunt in car number 18. Remember, he started back in 25th position, has made a steady progression. He's now up to 6th, and he looks to the low side of Bob Seneker.
Well, and he's had to bash and bump and kind of nudge his way through the field, going from 25th to 6th position. You can see the hood on the Atlantic Communications Pontiac kind of tilted up there. A little bit of a battle scar on the race car number 18. Mike Miller, the great veteran driver, has only 1 victory in the American Speed Association, and that came a whole bunch of years ago. He took about 10 or 12 years off and came back with new enthusiasm last year, contended for the championship early, and is very excited about the possibility of contending for the championship again this year. We're scattering some debris out on the racetrack over on the backstretch, and it remains to be seen whether a flag will come out over that. I did see it with my own eyes, although we did not see it on camera here. And And we'll just have to watch and take a look here as Mike Eddy continues to run away along with Brad Loney from the race for third place that we're looking at right here.
Glenn Allen has to make his move quickly. Should we run the rest of this thing to the checkered under green flag conditions, he's got to make his move. Seneca used the outside groove in his qualifying race, and again, Glenn Allen is able to get maybe 2 or 3 inches. He can keep his foot in the throttle, get Gary St. Amant unsettled, even without spinning him out, but he doesn't want to make the pass that way. He wants to get cleanly alongside, force Gary to the high side, and make the pass in that manner. Seneca won't wait much longer, I'm sure, as he continues to take a peek at the high side of the racetrack.
Well, Glenn tried a little bit on the low side there for just a moment, but didn't see enough of an opening to make it work. We're staying out of trouble out. We're watching the race for third while the 2 leaders run out front. There's Gary St. Amant, who owns third spot right now. Glenn Allen Jr. in the 15 car challenging Bob Seneca and veteran Mike Miller, the 2 veteran drivers who build their own race cars from the ground up, are sitting back there watching. Here goes Jay Sauter going out of the racetrack once again as we peek in on the lead, which has looked a lot like this for about 140 laps.
And behind the leaders, it continues between Gary St. Amant, Glenn Allen Jr., Bob Seneca, and Mike Miller as they've now eased away from Joe Knott. But a 4-car freight train, Miller pulls alongside Seneca in turn number 3, but thinks better of it with Tom Jones on the high side. Again, he takes a look down low. Seneca has to be wondering now if that move to the outside was a wise one, as a fellow veteran is there to challenge him.
Well, he might have been distracted for just a moment by the appearance of Tom Jones out the right side window of his car there. These 2 went at it just exactly like this in the qualifier until Mike Miller in the 18 cut down a right front tire and gave it over to Bob Seneca, who went on to win that qualifier. It looks like Miller's making good on the pass inside.
And Glenn Allen is making good on the pass for third as they come through turns 3 and 4. It was choreographed. He and Mike Miller both went under their respective contenders, and now there's been a big shuffle, 3rd through 6th positions. Glenn will now have to charge, as will Mike Miller. He now will have to do to Gary St. Amant what Glenn Allen was finally able to accomplish.
Well, we called Mike Miller Mr. Inside for a lot of last season because he seemed to be able to find a way to set up his race car to run lower than anybody else on the track. Of course, Bob Seneca has a great setup being able to do on his car, too. He builds it, as we said, from the ground up, as does Mike Miller. And when you do that to your car, you tend to know a lot more about the little things that it will do.
And Seneca sideways and spins in turn 2.
Oh, and collects Joe Knott there, just briefly brushed him now. It looked like Mike Miller and Gary St. Amant going at it, and somehow Seneca might have thought that something was going on, got into the brakes. There was no contact between the front of Seneca's car and the rear of either of the other 2. He just kind of went around and collected Joe Knott in the process.
Well, he had slipped way up out of the racing groove, and he knew he had to go up there to try to make the pass, but he got a little too high out into the marbles, what we call the marbles. That's the rubber that rolls off the tires, and just flat lost it. And you very rarely see that from Bob Seneca. You can see that there's been a little bit of damage to the left rear corner, but nothing significant.
Let's take another look at it. Now remember, Tom Jones in the 0 car was on the outside of this race right here. They may approach. We may see the approach. Now here Seneca gets into the outside of the 18 car of Miller, and there's Tom parked on the outside. And here comes Seneca right on around.
You know, I don't know. Jones was way outside. He's exiting the racetrack in turn number 1. I'm not sure that had that much effect on what happened with Bob Seneca. Take another look from maybe a slightly different angle and see if we can get a bit more insight. There they are down. This is coming off turn number 4, I think.
Now he'll turn in.
Look how loose Bob Seneca is. Rear of the car way outside. Mike Miller isn't even thinking about Bob Seneca. He's looking at Gary St. Amant. He gets just a little bit too high. See how high Jones is? He's really not a factor there. I think that there's maybe a little bit of fluid or something that was slippery up out of the groove in turn number 1, and Bob just got into whatever it was.
The 84 car turned in just a little bit there, tucked the front end down into the back end of the 18 car, and around he went. Most of the rear end damage was sustained when Joe Knott ticked him on the way by.
We hadn't been paying any attention to that lead battle, and it was continuing to be a battle as Loney was staying right with Mike Eddy. Now Glenn Allen Jr. gets a shot at the front pair.
Well, they've closed it up, of course, coming off the caution flag now with the green as we restart with 31 laps remaining in this Buckeye 300.
It's Mike Eddy, Brad Loney, Glenn Allen Jr. runs 3rd, Gary St. Amant 4th, Mike Miller is 5th, 6th is Joe Knott, 7th is Brian Refner, in 8th position is Scott Hansen, 9th is Steve Holzhausen, Seneca's dropped all the way to 10th with car number 10, Tony Roper, running in 11th position and challenging Seneca.
Now watching Brad Loney here dealing with Glenn Allen Jr., Brad has not had to really watch the mirrors too much here. There's always been a lot of room between 2nd and 3rd place on this racetrack, and for the first time really today, although although we have seen flashes of it before. Brad Loney is getting a real challenge up from behind by Glenn Allen Jr., who obviously has his car handling exactly the way he wants to right now. And while Loney deals with Glenn Allen in the rearview mirror, Mike Eddy's running off and hiding.
Here's why. Brad Loney has been able to run a higher groove. That's where the car wants to go. But car number 15, Glenn Allen Jr., his car hunts for the bottom. It's right down at the yellow line. So when Brad runs his line, it allows Glenn to go to the bottom, and Brad doesn't have as much freedom to move up and down on the racetrack where he likes. He likes to run high coming off the corners and then drop back down. But with Glenn Allen tucking the nose under, Loney can't make that move back down. See there? He just isn't able to get into 1 and 3 as hard as he was. And Mike Eddy is loving every minute of it.
And in trying to protect that second place position, now Glenn Allen just gets Loney a little bit loose going outside. He's got a fender underneath. Loney cuts him off again. And you can see Mike Eddy about 6 or 7 car lengths out in front while these two go at it for second.
Well, the 7-time champion is all by himself, and these two guys looking for their first championship. One of these kids looking for the first victory, Brad Loney. They're having a personal war. And again, it's hard contact in turn number 1. Neither one wants to give any quarter, and Loney is not the least bit intimidated.
Rock and roll racing from a couple of the young stars of the American Speed Association, racing for second spot behind the veteran. Glenn Allen now gets inside of Loney, and can he make the pass stick? Now Loney can use the whole racetrack that he wanted to before, and he was trying to protect the second position. He had to race where he didn't really want to. Now he's moved back to third spot behind Glenn Allen Jr., who goes after the leader.
Rock and roll or classical battle for position? A little bit of both, huh?
And here's side by side now. Mike Miller, Mr. Inside, trying to put a move on Gary St. Amand, who was the fastest qualifier. Mike Miller, 13th fastest qualifier, but relegated to the back of the field after cutting down a tire in the qualifying race here today. And now Mike Miller making good on his position out in front. He runs in 4th spot. Remember, we said before he started 25th. What a charge to the front by the 18 car.
And you can see Brad Loney, you can see him just out of frame, has moved back alongside Glenn Allen Jr., and he now will use the inside line, and this is the best racing of the day. Loney reappropriates second.
With 19 laps to go, Brad Loney in the number 33 car has retaken second place away from what looked like a very capable 15 car driven by Glenn Allen Jr. So maybe Brad Loney just dug down a little bit deeper inside for what he needed. If I'm going to be a champion, if I'm going to be a winner even, I have got to race myself all the way to the front, and now's the time to do it. 18 laps remain in this Buckeye 300.
Torch just made his first mistake in 3 years. He handed me a note. He said, Joe Knott is now running on only 7 cylinders. If he is, they better tech that engine. He's down a cylinder, but these are V6s. He's on 5 as Bill Baird is spun in turn number 2.
Oh, now you have absolutely destroyed the Torch. He is crestfallen back here now. His chin is resting around his navel right now. The first mistake he had. But we try to console our statistician and return for the final 16 laps of this race.
It rarely lasts longer than a few loops. Maintained with genuine AC oil filters. Hill, Dale and Waddy, no other filter can track down, trap and capture more dirt. So, AC oil filters keep your engine in the hunt for a longer life.
AC-Delco. It's like buying time.
Special rebates on AC plugs, oil and air filters every day at Nationwide.
So I got my new 1995 Edelbrock catalog in the mail, and look what I discovered.
Power. Power for whatever you drive. That's what you get from Edelbrock. Edelbrock manifolds, Edelbrock carburetors, Edelbrock cylinder heads, Edelbrock camshafts and components, Edelbrock exhaust systems, Edelbrock air cleaners and valve covers, Edelbrock Harley products, and more.
Discover the power for yourself. Just call 1-800-FUN-TEAM for your free 95 Edelbrock catalog.
That's 1-800-FUN-TEAM for your free Edelbrock catalog.
Monroe developed SensaTrack shocks to smooth out the road for a comfortable ride. But SensaTrack doesn't stop there. It's the only shock that also gives you extra control when you need it most. SensaTrack shocks and struts, only by Monroe, for comfort and control.
I remember building this deck, but the Palmers forgot to protect it with Thompson's Wood Protector Preservative. Protection from water, sun, and mildew damage. They learned their lesson. Thompson's Wood Protector Preservative. #1 for wood.
Coming up on NHRA Today, we'll go down under for a report on the Australian Nationals, plus all the latest news from the Fram Southern Nationals.
NHRA Today, 6:30 p.m., 5:30 Central on TNN Motorsports.
We knocked off a couple of more laps while you were away. We are down to 13 to go. The green flag about to come out, and as we speak, it waves with Mike Eddy trying to hold off the charging field, led by Brad Loney, who retook second position from Glen Allen just a few moments ago. You saw that. And so we raced the last dozen laps here under and now we got another incident on the racetrack, and it looks like the 26 car, that's Bill Baird, has come to a unscheduled stop in the middle of the track, and the yellow flag comes out once again. Keep in mind, though, at home, folks, we will race under green to the finish. It is a rule in the American Speed Association, the AC-Delco Challenge Series. We race at least 5 laps under green to the checkered flag. So don't worry about all this caution flag late in the race. We're still going to see them race for the victory.
189 laps complete. Mike Eddy had the luxury of a lapped car between himself and Brad Loney on that restart. That luxury is no longer there, so we'll see whether or not Loney is able to reassert himself. Now, it seems that the Winnebago Flex Steel Chevy is best under long runs of green, so it's going to be a tough task for anybody to beat Mike Eddy in quest for a second straight here at Columbus.
Bill Baird from Sturgis, Kentucky in the Saturn machine. Allen's Body Shop Chevrolet brings out another caution flag. There's another look at the top 10 and some of the folks who are enjoying the Buckeye 300 along with you.
I remember building this deck, but the Palmers forgot to protect it with Thompson's Wood Protector Preservative. Protection from water, sun, and mildew damage. They learned their lesson. Thompson's Wood Protector Preservative. #1 for wood.
It doesn't matter if you're the best driver. It doesn't matter if you've got the best car, or the best crew, or even the shiniest wheels on the track. If you don't have Goodyear Eagle tires, well, you're just not going to win the NASCAR championship.
Goodyear, #1 in racing, #1 in tires.
Without Goodyear, you're not going to win one of these. Believe me, I know.
In a sport where nerves are made of steel, it's only natural the tools are made by craftsmen. 1,600 Craftsman hand tools made in America, guaranteed forever. The only official tools of IndyCar, NASCAR, NHRA, and the new Super Truck Series by Craftsman, only at Sears.
With all the motor oils on the shelf, how do you know which one to choose? Some people even think they're all the same. Then why do you suppose one brand of motor oil is the #1 choice of America's top mechanics for use in their own cars and trucks? Which brand? Valvoline. People who know use Valvoline. And for extra engine protection, try Valvoline DuraBlend synthetic blend motor oil.
Welcome back, everybody, for the closing laps that will be under green of this Buckeye 300, presented by Nationwide Auto Parts, the best brands in these parts, and the best man for this race so far has been Mike Eddy, the number 88. Took the lead early and has held on to it ever since. He has been challenged ever since, however, by Brad Loney in the number 33 car, who continues to run at second spot, having retaken that second position, that is, from Glen Allen Jr. Running in fourth spot is Mike Miller, the number 18. What a run to the front he has had as we go green with 5 laps remaining in this Buckeye 300.
And Glen Allen pressuring Brad Loney for the second spot. Loney trying to keep tabs on Mike Eddy. Like to have one more run at him. Closes to within less than half a car length off turn 4.
Mike Eddy has been driving with Brad Loney in the rearview mirror all day long and very successful at it. You don't think he's going to make a mistake? Well, he hasn't made too many in his long career in the American Speed Association. One of the most talented, one of the most resourceful, and, well, we said it before, age and treachery will outdo youth and enthusiasm every time. Well, maybe not every time, but it looks like it's going to happen here today.
People might be shocked to know some of the NASCAR Winston Cup rides that Mike Eddy has turned down because this is his home. He loves the short tracks. He loves living in Michigan. He can make a lot of money in ASA because he wins a lot of races and a lot of championships. He's as good as they come on a short track, and no doubt about it, he could do it on the super speedways if he chose, but that's not his thing. And Mike gets a tap from Brad Loney, who was pushed by Glen Allen. White flag, 1 lap to go.
And soon, Mike Eddy will be looking at the flag that he likes to see the most, and that is the black and white checkered flag in the hands of Roger Slack. And it comes out right now. It looks as though the run to the checkers will be completed by Mike Eddy, the number 88 Goodwrench Pontiac, followed by Brad Loney in the 33 machine, the Winnebago Flex Steel machine. Then Glenn Allen Jr. in the number 15 car, the CarQuest Eaglewood Construction Pontiac. And Mike Miller's run from 25th ends in 4th place here at this Buckeye 300. We'll be back with more from the Columbus Motor Speedway. These folks aren't going anywhere. Don't you either.
Dear Thompsons, I've always used Thompson's Water Seal waterproofer. But when I ran out, a clerk said, "Try this one. They're all the same." What a mistake. 2 years later, rain still rolls off the Thompson side. The other side just soaks it up.
Don't risk your home. Other brands don't work like Thompson's. Some hardly work at all.
Thanks for a great product. Stephen Zukowskis.
Also protect with Thompson Stain, the only stain with Thompson's Water Seal waterproofer.
With all the motor oils on the shelf, how do you know which one to choose? Some people even think they're all the same. Then why do you suppose one brand of motor oil is the #1 choice of America's top mechanics for use in their own cars and trucks? Which brand? Valvoline. People who know use Valvoline. And for extra engine protection, try Valvoline DuraBlend Synthetic Blend Motor Oil.
There was no mistake about it. I was definitely in cruiser heaven. Even my wife looked somehow different. And there I was prowling the streets on the new Kawasaki Vulcan 800. V-twin rumbling, chrome gleaming in the sun. Is this for real? Or am I just dreaming?
The Vulcan 800 from Kawasaki. It's as real as it gets.
People. It's no wonder they build the most dependable, longest-lasting trucks on the road.
The 1995 AC-Delco Challenge Series on TNN is brought to you in part by Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it's wins, it works. By your GM Goodwrench service dealer, we want your business. By Nationwide Auto Parts, the best brands in these parts. And by Schlage Locks, the Doberman of locks. There are the top 10 unofficial results of the Buckeye 300. A terrific afternoon of racing, culminating in yet another victory by the 7-time, maybe soon to be 8-time champion. Ralph?
Well, you know, Brian, we all said at the beginning of the show, if you wanted to win the ASA championship, you'd have to go through Mike Eddy, and you laid the gauntlet down again today. Were you surprised by the pressure that came from behind you with Glenn Allen and Brad Loney?
Well, I knew they were there all day, and I was just trying to run fast enough to stay in front and not wear the tires out. We were a little concerned about that all day. And my car would go better the longer the runs went. And when we keep having the yellows, it takes me a while to get going. So I really hated to see them yellows coming there that close to the end.
Is this a sign of things to come from you? Are you ready to go after this 8th championship?
Well, I've always been ready. You know, sometimes you have bad luck, sometimes you have good luck, but I got to believe that this is going to be our year.
Mike Eddy's well on his way, gentlemen.
A lot of candidates for Wynn's winning move. This one had to get it. He had lost second position just 1 lap before, had Brad Loney to the guy on the outside of him, that fuchsia car number 15 of Glenn Allen Jr., and he came right back to retake it. Improves by 1, his best ever career finish, and that came in the last race of last season. Brad Loney, the Wynn's winning move, and a second-place finish.
A terrific run and a terrific race behind the 88 car of Mike Eddy, finishing second, Brad Loney third, Glenn Allen Jr., and of course I take personal pleasure in Mike Miller's 4th place finish, coming all the way from 25th. We have had a great time here at Columbus Motor Speedway and the Buckeye 300 presented by Nationwide, and we want to remind you this telecast is a copyrighted production of Group 5 Sports, a division of Group 5 Sales Incorporated. Any use, rebroadcast, or other transmission without the written consent of Group 5 Sports is prohibited. And we are looking down on victory lane. We're going to go once again down to Ralph Shaheen quickly with our runner-up.
Boy, a tremendous run from you today, Brad, and you didn't seem to be phased at all by having Mike Eddy, the guy that you were racing with. Tell me about that.
I don't know about being phased. These guys are so tough. Mike and Glenn Allen, they're
fierce competitors, and we did the best we could and just didn't quite have enough for Mike, but this Winnebago Flex Steel Furniture H&W Motor Express team did a fantastic job, and this team deserves a good finish today, and our sponsors do as well.
Brad Loney ready to go racing in 95.
Our congratulations once again to Mike Eddy for his victory here in the Buckeye 300. You've been watching live ASA Racing on the AC-Delco Series from Columbus Motor Speedway. For Ralph Shaheen and Rob